Hello, listeners of the Art Versations podcast.
Hi. My name is. Hi. My name. Hi. My name is Broadway Classic.
Let's hear it.
Welcome back to the Art Versations podcast, where I sit down with artists of all kinds and converse with them about art. Artists, conversations, put them together, you get Art Versations. If you're new to this podcast, thank you for clicking on the show. Feel free to rate and review and send me a DM on the podcast Instagram at @ArtVersationsPod. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Who am I? You're like, who is this person? I'm Bri, like the cheese. Your host and lover of all things artistic, just trying to keep the arts alive. I hope you all had a great week making your holiday plans, enjoying the Christmas music. Mariah Carey really knew what she was doing. I don't wanna... I can't do it. Don't worry, I'm not gonna do that. Okay. Let's get this week's episode. I sat down over Zoom with Sierra Holder. She is a performer and co-host of the podcast Chunky Coyote, a couples podcast, but not. Once you finish listening to this episode, go check out that podcast. I put the link in the description. We talk about the origin of her podcast, why she started it, as well as her very inspiring work with Diva Day, a non-for-profit organization helping to normalize menstruation using arts. Fucking incredible. So inspiring to hear about her work. I think you'll really enjoy this one. Join us now for episode 11 of season 3. It's like a therapy session.
I'm like, I'm sweating. I'm like, so excited.
Hi, Sierra.
Hi.
How are you doing in this current moment in time?
I think in this specific moment, good.
Yay.
Yeah. How are you?
I am so happy to just sit and talk to people because for the last day or so, I've been kind of in my apartment alone.
Mm-hmm.
So connection, even though it's over Zoom, feels really nice.
You live alone? That's so nice.
Do you think? Well, I mean,
yeah.
Up and down. It's up and down.
Sure. Yeah. I feel like in this time, it would definitely have its challenges. And
you have two roommates, right?
I do. I have 2 roommates, which is like honestly quite nice.
Yeah.
Roommates can be tricky, but one of them is my baby brother. So
right.
We've always gotten along. I mean, not always, but for the most part, we're very similar and have gotten along really nicely. So it's nice to just be like, if we want to be alone, we can be alone. And if we want to hang out, we can hang out. And then typically I live with my best friend who I run my podcast with.
Yes.
But right now she's in Nova Scotia. So my other best friend, who is also from Nova Scotia, is staying with us, and he has a dog, and it's just been very nice.
Okay, so a little Nova Scotia switch.
A little Nova Scotia switch.
A little exchange program happening.
Yeah. I love East Coasters, I guess. I have a lot of them in my life. So.
But you're from Ottawa, which is so cool that we connected. We were just talking a little bit about how like our lives literally have been connected so closely, but we just missed each other.
Yeah, I just find that so kooky, and I love that. I'm like, it's it feels very like the universe is working. Do you know what I mean? The fact that like we were literally in the same place a lot of the time, like same buildings.
Yep.
Share, like, I think of award ceremonies at dance competitions, and like we were literally probably sitting like meters away from each other on the same stage, and never met until a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, when we were throwing food at each other.
Exactly. It's just like, wow,
Yeah.
that's so cool.
It works in weird ways and the universe. And I feel so like, you know, go Ottawa for, you know, people still from Ottawa, people still like making it in Toronto, doing the thing, you know, pounding the pavement, like actually getting to a place where they now live in Toronto versus in Ottawa, you know?
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I definitely like always dreamed of, I mean, when I was younger, it was like New York City.
Yes.
But,
oh, yeah. I'm with you.
But as I got older, it's just, I don't know. I'm like, this is the place that I sort of always dreamed of living. And it's still, even though I've been here for a few years, it's still so wild sometimes when I walk out of my door and I'm like, I live here. Yeah. Like all of those daydreams that I had when I was like 10 and all of those, you know, fun little plans that I made and like fingers crossed and like wishing on all the stars and all of that stuff. It's so wild to be like, oh my gosh, like I did it. Mm-hmm. I'm here and I live here. Yeah. And we like do stuff here. Like,
yeah, you're not just surviving, like you do live.
No, we have lives here. And I think that's, I don't know, it's just kind of cool because I think the dancers are perfectionists. I don't know, like most of us are like hyper perfectionists and can get like, we can all be really hard on ourselves and like hypercritical. And sometimes you kind of feel like, oh my gosh, like what goals am I achieving? Like, what am I really doing? And you're like, I haven't never done anything, or, you know, all of those like not great thoughts that you have.
There's like those high expectations to be a New York City or, you know, even a Toronto, like mogul.
Yeah. Exactly. And you're like, oh, I haven't done anything. But then in those moments when you walk out your door and you like say hi, like run into someone on the street and you go to your local coffee shop and you like, I don't know, get to go to a rehearsal or something, like just walking around the city and being like, this is where I live my life is like a really great reminder that you're like, no, you made it all the way here, just like you wanted. And that's like, I don't know. I feel very proud of that.
Same. Yeah. Whenever I bike home from work, I kind of go across like a bridge that shows me like the whole city skyline and like the entire everything. And I always sort of take a moment to scan it, and it makes me feel warm inside. It makes me feel proud.
Yeah.
Like yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's like a certain level of magic that's there.
Yes.
And it's so nice. I'm like, oh, I feel like the moment that I don't feel that way might be a moment that I would like need to leave. I don't like see that happening for me because I love living in cities, but like, yeah, that magic is such a beautiful feeling. It's so nice.
Mm-hmm. And you came for school, is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you went to Sheridan like right after high school.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that was, and like Oakville is not Toronto, but it's also, you know, it's close, Toronto adjacent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I graduated and like, as soon as I found out I got in, it was, right away, which my mom was excited, but also like, oh my God. Cause she always told me that and I think she was always like, I was always saying like, Mom, I'm not going to university here. I'm going to go, like, I'm going to live away from home. I'm going to go to like NYU or something again, like big city dreams. And she very much wanted me to at least do like a first degree in Ottawa or like 1 year of university in Ottawa. And then, you know, see if we could, you know, move afterwards. And she was like, you know, Sheridan, she obviously had like all the faith in the world in me, but she was like, this is a really competitive school. There are like hundreds of kids who are wanting to get into this program from all over the country. Like, she's like, you know, it's like a bit of a long shot. Like they only take 30 something to 40 students. Like it's, you know, you can at least audition, but we'll see. And then when I got in, she was like, well, you have to go. There's no way I can keep you from being here, which I really appreciate, honestly.
Oh,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm like talking to a mirror because I literally had the
Yeah.
same experience. Like, I just for all these like New York schools, and then I realized it's way too expensive, and
Oh my
even
God.
Toronto is also expensive,
So
but it
expensive.
kind of worked out better because it's still in Canada, and yeah, it's like you have these goals that you think could be so like in reality could happen. And then they do, and then you just like have to take them. You have to grab them by the reins. Yeah,
you do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like obviously a lot scarier, I think. Like I remember that feeling when it was getting closer and closer to the time where I was supposed to move to school, and like getting to the school, and just like I didn't expect to feel so sad to leave. Do you know what I mean? Like you always think that you're just gonna like get into the school away from home and be so excited, and then you just go and it's really easy. But there's like a certain level, I guess, of safety that exists with going to school in your hometown. And
you
like
still kind of have that community if you need it.
Yeah, and you can like live in your old room still, and you can you know, all of your friends that decided to stay, like you can still see them and everything is still familiar. And I just there is a certain level of even though it's super exciting to move away, there is a certain level of sacrifice, because you're like, I am trusting that the things that are super important to me that I'm leaving behind will still be there.
Yeah,
as I like go off on this new adventure, which is like really hard, but also prepares you for the life, I think, of a creative person. Yeah.
Yes, that's so true. And you also kind of have the similar experience of me of being like a dancer who like also sings and also has all these other creative things that they like to do, like your podcast, acting, musical theater. Like I love that you like went for that route, because I didn't, and I always kind of regretted it. I was like, oh, maybe I should have just like gone for musical
It's never
theater.
too late. It's never too late. That's the thing that's so nice though. I think like even with just like courses in general, there's so many ways to educate yourself. And I think what's like so, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, but I'm like, we've all been like indoctrinated into like educational institutions. Like it has to be like, you know, you go to your elementary school, and then you go to your high school, and then you go to post-secondary, and like it's sort of very much that like learning only happens at a recognized like school. But once you graduate, I mean, I'm sure you can get like a master's and a doctorate and all of that stuff, but if you don't want to do that, like that's not the only way that you can gain more skills. And I wish people, like I wish more people would have, especially in high school, helped me like understand how else I can get education outside of like, you know, a degree and all of that stuff. Cause I'm like, now with websites like Coursera, you can like take a course in anything you want from recognized universities, but like instead of having to apply to that university, you can just like take this course from this place for free. And then if you want the certificate from like Harvard, you pay the like $100 or $60 to get the certificate at the end. But if you just want the knowledge, if you just want the knowledge, you can
like the university system.
We 100% are hacking the university system, because I'm like, education should not be so inaccessible. I was like so lucky to be able to go away to school and to get into this, but like my family definitely struggled. And if you're in an arts like program, you know that they do not give us any time to do anything. So there is no like, oh, I worked at the same time as. It's like, no, when you have 40 hours of class, and then you have to find out how to rehearse outside of those hours so that you're prepared for class. Like, obviously you are not working, cannot, but like that does not, it's incredibly hard to get that education that is seemingly required for, you know, the rest of your life. But I think, you can like take all of these courses. acquire all this knowledge. Lots of like veteran actors and singers, you know, hold classes on their own. You can like get a vocal teacher. You can get an acting coach. You can get all of these things and just like work with them on your own time and like continue your learning or like, you know, building those skills. But it is a lot harder. It requires a lot more self-discipline, which I don't always have.
Do you like, I guess, I mean, I'm sure you love learning. It seems like you do, but do you, how do you find that like discipline in yourself without a teacher?
I don't know that I do. I think it's something that I really want to work on because I think about doing it a lot, but I don't necessarily like take advantage of any of these things that I know are available to me.
I mean, you're also, you know, navigating a lockdown and trying to be a human.
But I don't know why. Like, it seems so hard to like take the initiative sometimes to do it yourself, even though I would say that like most artists I know are like very self-motivated, very driven, because you have to be, because that's like the career. But
who else is going to tell you to do it but you? Yeah.
But it's also like, I don't know, kind of hard to do it.
Yeah, to find that like, okay, I'm actually going to sit down and like focus on my education or focus on bettering myself in, you know, whatever form that comes, I guess. Maybe it's a course, or maybe it's just sitting down and like writing down what you want to do with your life, you know, like taking that time.
Starting.
Yeah.
Starting is the hardest part.
Coursera. Yeah. I feel like I've heard of like Skillshare, which is
me too. More, I think it's like similar. I think it's a similar thing, but Skillshare is more like, I know that you can do like painting classes and like illustration and like all of that stuff. It's like a wider variety of skills, whereas Coursera is like literal courses that are offered by universities, and it's just like a whole bunch of schools. And then you can just like choose one. And then if you want the certificate to be like, I have this certification or whatever, you can pay depending on the school. Like some of them are like $20, $30, $50. I know that Harvard is like, or like the more Ivy League schools are like $110, but like $110 to be like, I have a certificate from Harvard is
versus like the many, many dollars that you'd pay for even 1 year at that school. Literally
the like, I don't know, $40,000 American that you would have to pay.
That's the other thing.
And also like, God forbid you get hurt or anything, like can't go to a hospital, because you don't have $15,000. I don't know how anyone is getting an education.
We're making it work, even though we're so broke. That's so cool. I feel like I just learned what I'm going to be doing over the lockdown now.
Same. I'm hoping that like I have the energy and the motivation to really do it this round.
I know, right? This round.
Cool. This round.
Isn't that so weird to say? Like, I actually, when I heard about the lockdown, I was like, oh, okay. I know what I'm going to do then. I've been through this. I'm prepared for lockdown.
It is kind of nice to feel like I know what this looks like, I guess. And I know that in a lot of ways it's going to be like, oh my God, this again, like this might feel harder. But I'm like, I think what was so difficult about the first time is that the weather was getting nicer.
Yes.
And that feeling of like, we've seen it. I see it every year. It's like one of my favorite things also about living in the city is it's like, there's like something that happens when the sun comes out. All of a sudden, like the city explodes and like everyone is on the streets. Everybody is like doing something, going for a walk in the park, like all of that stuff. And I think what was really hard, I think what was really hard is that like people just wanted to be outside and do all of those things because it's like, oh my gosh, the sunlight has brought us all back to life and couldn't. And some people didn't listen to the rules, obviously. But I feel like this time is a little bit easier because I'm like, well, it's dark at like 4 p.m. I don't really want to leave the house anyway.
True. You can kind of just hibernate now. I feel like we're going into
Yeah.
hibernation. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm just kind of like, I want to light nice candles and cook hearty meals and drink a lot of wine. That's pretty much.
That sounds great.
Pretty much it.
It sounds like a good life. Like,
we make do.
yeah. I feel so grateful for like the chance that we had to work on like a small film with Alyssa Martin recently, like in person. It wasn't over Zoom, thank God. Like just to be around creatives safely and make something super weird and fun. And that experience was so grateful for me.
Yeah, it just felt like so joyous. I honestly love working with Alyssa, and anytime her name's involved with anything, I'm like, yes, because it is like the work is like super specific and wonderful, and like obviously has a lot of thought put into it, but also is like not too like, I don't know, like you can be specific to the point of like really tearing something apart and just like beating it dead. And I feel like she doesn't do that. Like everything seems very natural and joyous, very like, what does my body want to do next? And there's room for like laughter and play. Like I feel like we laughed and smiled the whole time.
Yeah, just enjoying.
Like my face hurt.
Yeah.
I was like, I am genuinely enjoying this time.
Yeah.
So there are some moments in the creative process that feel like really grueling and like,
so true.
And I have never felt that working with her. And then just like getting to pelt each other with food and get really disgusting. And those last few days of like 19-degree sunshine.
Yeah, we lucked out so hard to have like a
that
blue
we got to
sky.
spend.
Yeah.
The blue sky, the warm wind, like it was like a very miraculous couple of days.
Yeah.
I would say. Like,
sorry, I think there's construction above me. If you hear that, I apologize.
That's okay. There's construction everywhere.
It's been going on like all week. And I'm like, I just want to record podcasts properly, please.
You're like, please stop.
Oh
my God.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Like Alyssa really makes sure that like the environment feels collaborative and not so like I'm the choreographer and you must do what I say. And that is really special. And in some ways, I think kind of personalizes the work a bit more and makes it feel like we were a part of it in an even better way or in a bigger way. It was so fun.
She's like she has such a strong vision, and like anything I see of hers, I would know it was her, even if her name wasn't on it.
Yeah.
And I think like
signaturized or say like her signature is so clear.
You're like, I know who that is. Totally. Yeah. And she, like in her, even though we were like, okay, we're like collaborating, I still also felt like really held by her and not like, okay, well, if you don't like if one of us like didn't come up with something to do, we wouldn't just like stand there forever until she still has like such a strong leadership, but it's not like I'm the leader. And if you don't, it wasn't like, but it also wasn't super passive either. So we were never like, okay, we're standing in a room. We've been sitting here in silence for 15, 20 minutes. And like, we don't really know what to do. Like it was, I think that's like such a difficult balance to strike.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like honestly a gift. I don't know that that's something you can necessarily teach a person.
Yeah. I think she's sort of, I don't know much about like how she's gotten her name in this like industry that we have, but she's found a way to make it unique, make it comical, make it meaningful and bright. And like a lot of the things that she does are so one of a kind.
Yeah, it
And like
really
when I
like
saw that she
shakes up
found,
the form.
yes, exactly. When I saw that she won the Dora this year, I was like, finally, like obviously this person or this, you know, rock bottom movement, this company like deserves the recognition, even though it's smaller, it's not so mainstream, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But it deserves it.
It definitely, yeah. Yeah. Everything is like so exciting. And you're just like, oh my gosh, what are we going to see now? What are we going to do next? Like, I don't really remember the last dance show that like wasn't hers that I saw where I like genuinely belly laughed like that. And I'm just like, it sounds weird, but I was like, I didn't know that dance could be funny.
Yes. Yes.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Like physical comedy. Like what? That's okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just like, all of the years, I love watching dance. I love dancing, but like, I would never describe it as like funny or like, oh my gosh, I laughed so hard or I really like enjoyed it. Like I've seen things that are like beautiful or moving or just like, wow, that's so good. But other than her stuff, I've never been like, haha, that's funny. Or honestly, her stuff. And I have an aunt who is also like a contemporary dancer and choreographer and has been for many years. And her stuff makes me laugh too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's a family member. That's so cute. I love that.
Yeah, it's very cool. She's cool.
Oh. Okay,
Oh
so tell me a little bit more about your podcast. I was listening to it a little bit this morning, and it centers around like in the intimacies of friendship and talking about platonic love. But please confirm with me, why is it called Chunky Coyote?
Okay, well, depending on when this comes out, because we were gonna like tease this basically.
Ooh, okay.
So, but our final episode airs this Sunday. So if it's after this Sunday, then I can say it.
It should be. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, it's called Chunky Coyote, and I run it with my normal roommate and best friend, Caroline Burton. And well, first of all, the name came from, we were in like lockdown part 1 and we were at a park.
Okay.
And there was like lots of dogs and we were just like sitting on a blanket. And there's this, you know, those dogs that are like, they're just like a mix of everything. And they're just these like light brown, like pointy snout, just like dog, like random looking dog. It depends. Some of them are bigger. Most of them are like mid-sized, but you're just like, you have no idea what kind of dog it is. Like, you know, it's like 30 different dog breeds mixed into one.
Got you.
And you're just like, this is a dog. So we saw one of those and it's like really chunky and had this like pointed nose and the pointed ears. And I think Caroline just looked at it and was like, that is a chunky coyote. And we were like, absolutely. We were like, absolutely, that's what that is. And then it just sort of became like a running joke in the house. And she changed her Instagram handle to Chunky Coyote. Okay. And it was just like this thing that we were like, that's exactly the name. That's exactly what it is. And then one day, I don't know, we were hanging out and it was the morning and I walked into her room and I was like, I want to do something together. Do you want to make a podcast? She's like, yeah. I was like, I think it could be called Chunky Coyote. And she was like, absolutely. Yeah. So I don't know. It's just sort of like one of those things that just seemed to fit. And it was like strange enough and ambiguous enough that you're kind of like, I don't know, if I saw Chunky Coyote on like a t-shirt, I'd be like, that's kind of cool. But also it's an inside joke and it's like kind of weird, nondescript. So it's like easily morphed.
Yeah. Like I was racking my brain because I was listening to and I'm thinking like, maybe they'll mention it or maybe it'll like, but I'm glad you're going to have an episode about it.
We will.
And not to say that I'm like, you have to make your podcast has to be so literal. And like, I love that it is kind of something like an inside joke, like you say, and it kind of has a double meaning too. Like, I don't know, it has nothing to do with, maybe it does. Maybe it has everything to do with platonic love. I don't know.
I have no idea. I have no idea. I was just kind of like, when you're like, I don't know why. And we didn't like really vet any other names. It was kind of just like, yes. And we're not going to like belabor a conversation about it too much. We're just like, I like it. That's all. I wish it was like more intricate. And maybe like one day we'll like, be having a chat and peel back layers and be like, oh my gosh, it all makes sense.
This is the meaning, yeah.
But for right now, it was just like, I like it.
Yeah. I mean, it's so nice, like, as a fellow podcast creator, like this thing that we've done, or this little medium that we have to play with, where anyone can talk about anything, and it's free usually, and it's, accessible and able to just be a little time capsule in in time, in the fabric of time or whatever, of this like recording or whatever. And I'm learning more about it as I go on, and as I do podcasts like this, about like what makes an entertaining podcast, what makes an informative podcast, or like there's so many different genres to it. But I think what's really special about yours is that it talks about something that like no one talks about. Like romantic love is so brought up as this big goal, and like you got to get married to one person and it's going to be a rom-com the rest of your life, and you're like, what about like the friends that I have,
yeah I think that was like one of the big things. We were like, okay, well, if we're gonna put our voices out there, like what do we have to say, what do we have to talk about? Because we want to be like creating space, not like taking it up. As much as we are claiming some space, we want to also be like I don't know. It's like, we're taking up space, but also creating space at the same time. Yeah. And I think a lot of what we both, I think, worry about was just being like, do we just want to hear the sound of our own voices? Because I think a lot of people do. And I think human beings in general are inherently like a little bit narcissistic, and you're like, the thoughts that I have in my brain are so interesting. But is it actually? And I think when we thought about like the things that were important to us and why we wanted to do it together, we were like, okay, well, what is it about like our relationship or our dynamic that like sets us apart from other podcasts that we listen to? And what is our like unique perspective? Because I think everybody has like some sort of angle that they see something from that might be different. And we were like, okay, well, our relationship and our closeness is like something that has been shown to us as something outside of the norm. And we don't necessarily understand why our closeness is like so confusing, or how we even got to have a relationship in the way that we do, because it's not something that either of us, I think, actively chose to create, but also we have taken steps to like having a certain level of like trust and intimacy and like respect and care. And just like understanding that especially for people who move away from home, the people that you meet and your friends become your family and like an extension of your family. And if you choose to, live away from your hometown for the rest of your life, those are the people that like, if you choose to have kids, will be around your children, like will be helping you through the hard times in your life, will like take care of you when you're sick. Like those are the kind of relationships that I have been lucky enough to have. I am lucky enough to have in my life. And yeah, I don't know. I just like, I love romantic love. I'm obsessed with it. I love like,
Same.
yeah, like I am a hopeless romantic in all the rom-coms and all of those things. Like
Yeah.
any morsel of information I can get about like figuring out romantic love and why it's so elusive and can I get
Yeah.
it and not, and like dating and all of that stuff. Like there's so many resources for that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much media highlighting that struggle and those things in life. But what I guess we hadn't seen before is people talking about cultivating friendships in the same way as they cultivate romantic relationships, or like striving to be surrounded by good people in the same way that you strive to like have a good partner. I had just like I've never consumed any media that like really talks about that specifically. And I think a lot of people have like really, I don't want to say like, because I don't know, who am I to be diagnosing or anything, but
yeah,
I just feel like a lot of people have friendships that like don't serve them at all.
The superficial, like,
yeah,
it's almost like acquaintance. It's not even friendship.
But then it's acquaintances, but then they see that as like the deepest relationship they have.
Yeah.
And like, you know, being super depressed or being like really anxious, having a panic attack, any of those things, and not feeling like you can call your friend who you claim is your best friend at any second to be like, hey, I'm not okay. Can you come get me? Or can you like talk me down? Or like any of those things. And I would do that for any of my friends in a heartbeat. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's so amazing that you have relationships like that. And I'm like, huh? Like,
you don't? Yeah.
And yeah, and
but
not
you're
to say that
out,
like,
you know, yeah.
I don't know. I'm just like you don't have to be like that close with every person in your life. Like I'm not, but at least having like one person, like one friend who you can have that like intimacy and connection with, I think is like crucial to survival. Like,
yeah. It's like an emergency contact in any sense, like not just SOS, but like just don't know what's going upstairs, but SOS, I need a friend right now.
Like, please.
It's so loud. So sorry.
It's okay. I feel bad for you mostly. I'm like, oh frick.
I don't even know like what they're doing. Anyways, yeah, most people like I think have those relationships, but maybe don't put a lot of time and energy into them.
Yeah.
And choose to go to friends who are superficial or who are just kind of there for convenience. And like you say, the people that I can like turn to for just those emergencies if ever I need them, and just maybe a hug or something completely just like safe and warm.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with marriage, has nothing to do with sex or, you know, those complexities.
Safety is like so important. And I think a lot of people, there are many people who have like never felt actually safe and like don't realize it. And that takes such a huge toll on your mental health and your ability to connect with people. Like on like my relationship with Caroline and also my relationship with our like close group of friends, those relationships being the way that they are and so intimate and so close, they've like made me a much better person. And they've taught me so much about myself and like how to regulate my own emotions, how to be vulnerable, like how important vulnerability really is. Cause that's something I think that I definitely have to work very hard on. And I think a lot of people do too. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, because those things are like skills and they're very difficult to work on and work through. And as much practice as you can get is like take all of the opportunities to learn how to talk about your feelings and learn how to ask for what you want and learn how to like be emotionally available and open and like vulnerable. Like those are not things that will magically appear once you find your like perfect partner.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to happen. Like there's so much, I think when I think about the kind of romantic partnership that I want, I'm like, there are all these things that I want to be before I even like meet this person or like get there in order for it to be like as successful as I want.
Yeah, you have to experience it, and because you can kind of guess what it'll be like, the idea of it, but working through it on your own time, like in person, is different, and it changes you, I think, too. Like
totally,
you evolve or you become so much more layered as a person when you have these relationships that are close and intimate, and they don't always have to be about love. Yeah. Or about,
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, love. So like, yeah, I don't know. It is so important. I think for a long time, especially with like romantic partners, I was always searching for a person who could like encompass every single thing that I needed. And the more that I like learn about people and about like the ways people's emotions and brains work and like the intricacies of relationships and relating to other people, is that like there is not a single person on this planet that can give you everything that you need. Like it's not possible, but it's also, we've been taught that there is that person out there.
Soulmates,
and so it's our job to find it. And if they don't have every single thing that we need, then the relationship is a failure. It's not working. And if you can't be somebody's like everything, then you just weren't ready, or like whatever. Yeah. And like, no, it's so important to have other people in your life and to not cut things off when you find your like romantic partner, because that's like setting yourself up for failure. Like no one person is always going to be able to give you everything, and they shouldn't need to, and you shouldn't need to be that for anyone either. Like humans live in communities for this exact reason. Because it's not sustainable for, like one person and one person to always be together and to never stray and to never, need or rely on any other person. And if you do, then like your relationship there's something wrong with it, or it's a failure, or it's a disaster, or like anything like that. Because it's sort of just like the more that you have good relationships is the more that you have good relationships. Like
it's the only way to do it. Yeah.
It all requires the same thing and the same muscles. Like, yeah, sharing yourself with another person is really hard. And like being emotionally available is really hard, especially like you get to a certain age and you have like built defense mechanisms and you've learned not to trust people, or there's also like such a huge culture in our generation of like, don't trust anyone and like all of that stuff. Like be closed off and be guarded. And it's like cool to have defense mechanisms that you can't work through and like all of that stuff. And I'm like, I love that we can make light of our traumas when we need to, because that is a coping mechanism. And I think humor is like really important, but it's also important to like address them and work through them so that we can healthily relate to other people and, live like better lives. Because it is, having good relationships is like imperative to our quality of life.
Yes to all that, absolutely. And having a space where you can speak about it and communicate like how you have worked through that is really cool. And I think inspires other people to do the same. Definitely inspires me when I was listening to it. Yeah,
I hope so. I don't know, it's just like I see so many people, like I think about our parents' generation who had a lot less of an opportunity to express themselves freely.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, why so many people, you know, when we like try and present older generations with new information, or we try and like bring them into the conversations we're having now, or any of those things, there's so much defense.
Yeah.
Because, or so much like resentment also, because they didn't get the opportunities that we have now to like talk openly and freely about our experiences and what our feelings are, and you know, have like certain experiences validated. Like there's so many things I think about that my mom has experienced that like nobody ever asked her about, and that nobody ever told her, you know, yeah, that's really bad. Like that is a shitty thing that happened to you. It shouldn't have happened to you, and I'm so sorry. And I bet that really sucks. Like just hearing that validating language about a negative experience that you've had is like so important. It's literally one of the only things people ever want, is to just be like validated in their feelings.
Yeah.
And I think like older generations just like did not have that. And they've like kept so many things
pushed down for so long.
Pushed and pushed and pushed. And obviously like the trauma gets held in your body. And then all of a sudden you're like really angry that these kids get to, I don't know, like dye their hair purple. And it's because, you know, when you were 10, you wanted to dye your hair purple, and your mom told you that it would, that it would like make you a bad person and made you feel shame and guilt. And then you just like held on to that for 20 years.
Or longer.
So I'm like, or longer.
Never brought up at all in your life.
Exactly. And now all of a sudden you're just like exploding all over everyone, and you're so angry, and you have no idea like where any of these emotions are coming from, or these feelings are coming from. And you just assume that it's just like, it's just the way you are, and there's nothing you can do about it. But just like talking it out is sometimes like the only thing you need.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
like
as simple as that,
it's,
right? Just a little bit of communication, a little bit of like word vomit to let it
like
go.
say it out loud.
Yeah.
Just say it out loud. Put it like outside of your brain.
Yes.
Because when things are crammed up here, it just
it's not good. It gets bad.
Yeah.
It starts to make you also, I think, a closed off person, and then you don't want to be helpful to others, or you don't like you tend to just sort of, then you're on your own island, and that's not, I don't think that's any way to live, especially right now where we have to be so community based and so like helpful with each other.
It's nobody like wants to approach an island in that way. Do you know what I mean? Like you think you start to close yourself off because you're like, nobody is like coming to ask me questions about myself, or like nobody wants to relate to me or like be in a relationship with me. And then you start to close yourself off, and then people encounter you and they go, well, that's a really closed off person, and I don't feel safe approaching them. And then, you know, like you're upset about being unapproachable.
But it's
and
like,
these people are like, I don't want to, do you know what I mean? Like it's such a hard relationship where you're like, someone has to cave in that situation. Like somebody, like we both have to be willing to like be open, even though maybe sometimes we're not sure what we're going to get, which is easier said than done. I would say.
Hell yeah. This was really great. Fun. I'm glad we talked about this. I love it's like a therapy session.
I'm like I'm sweating. I'm like, so excited.
Maybe we should switch gears. I do want to, you know, we only have a little bit of time left, but I do want to ask you about Diva Day and how you're a part of this non-for-profit organization, which is, I think when I was looking on the website, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it started in Kenya and sort of came over to Canada. Is that?
Well, we're all like Canada based. So one of my best friends, Melinda Ayanga, who was like the original visionary for Diva Day. Her dad is from Kenya. and we met in theater school. And so one day, I think her dad was like showing her photos of like Kenya and like classrooms. She's been in her when she was little and stuff, but they were just like happened to be looking through photos.
Okay.
And she was like, came across this photo of a classroom, and she was like, who are these like three young women who are sitting at the back? And her dad was like, oh, those three are on their period. So basically they would bleed onto sand, like at a bench at the back of the class, they would bleed onto sand all day.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they are finished, like school for that day, they would wipe off the sand and they would walk home.
Wow.
Not great. Yeah.
Whoa.
So she was like, that is like so far from my understanding of like the menstrual experience.
Yeah.
I've like never, like that's just like, what? And her dad
like,
was,
that's so just
super uncomfortable. Yeah. And like embarrassing.
Very.
Like, I think of the times that I've leaked
Yeah.
before in classrooms and been like, oh my God, I just want to go home, and having that just be like the norm. So basically she was like, well, that's horrible. And her dad was like, well, those are the lucky ones, because most of the time they just stay at home because they don't have, pads or tampons or anything to care for their periods, even though it happens like every month as it should.
Yeah.
So she was like, I have to do something about this. So she fundraised and bought like 150 Diva cups wholesale, and essentially went with her dad the next time that he went and had sort of the first Diva day, which was like one day, one school, handed out these cups and got the young menstruators to like tell stories and like share about their first experiences and just sort of like start to foster that sense of community. Because I think everywhere, this is not just related to like rural Kenya. I think it's like across the board. There's a lot of shame involved in like the process of like getting your period. Like I remember like hiding tampons in my sleeve, or like having to be like super secretive and like nobody can know, and like,
yes, don't talk about it.
Don't talk about it. Don't look at it.
So like,
exactly,
thinking it's taboo, even though
and it's like
not
gross.
just women, but every a big part of the population.
Yeah, so you're like, it's not like gross or anything. So she did that, and then when she got back from that trip, was like, I think that this could be, because that was like one school in one small part of Kenya. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I know this is happening all over. So what if, we started an organization where we use, our training as artists to educate people about menstruation, to dismantle shame, and to eliminate barriers to education, because we know that like getting education is like one of the biggest ways that people can succeed and create lives for themselves. So we were like, we need to keep these people in school. Like, this should not be something that is keeping them from learning. Because if you think about like, okay, you bleed for 1 week every single month, like that's a lot of school that you're missing, like a whole week. And if you have like an irregular period, like if you're bleeding for longer than that, like that's, we're setting people back like a lot, and it's not fair, because your body is functioning in the way that it should. So she got a group of our friends together and was like, hey, do you want to try and make a not-for-profit, like a charity with me, and we'll figure out how we can do this again, but like bigger. And we were like, yeah, sure.
So cool.
Yes, because like who wouldn't want to be a part of something like so important, and using your art for something that's like bigger than yourself is something that like I know all of us are really passionate about. So we used our arts-based abilities. So we held a bunch of fundraisers and like sang and danced and got other people to make, events, and we held events, and from the ticket sales, we then bought tickets to Kenya, and Diva Cup partnered with us, which was amazing. And so they gave us like 1,000 cups to bring to Kenya, and they helped us print workbooks that we made. And we built like as a collaborative team, we built like empowerment and educational based workshops along with the book and the cups. And so every menstruator, we went to like 11 schools and met over a thousand young people, and they all got cups and books. And it was not without, you know, struggle and all of that stuff. But yeah, that's
completely
what we do.
took off. It sounds like I think it started in 2017 was like the first Diva Day. And then like 3 years later, there's like a partnership with Diva Cup. Well, that's amazing. And you're one of the like co-founders of the, I guess, like this part of it, and also a creative associate. Like amazing that you get to put time and energy into giving back, using your arts, using education. Like,
it feels
amazing.
It feels good to just like be doing something, because I think there's I often, I'm sure you do too, like get so overwhelmed with like how many horrible things there are to address in the world. And we're like, hey, like, what do we do about all of this? And it can get super overwhelming. And sometimes when I'm overwhelmed, I just like don't do anything because I'm like, I just don't know where to start. And this is like such a wonderful opportunity to like get to do something. And so we're hoping that it will expand to Canada and like all over the world, because, you know, extreme poverty is not something that just exists like on the other side of the world. I think it happens like right here. Like we're experiencing such a huge epidemic of like houselessness right now. And those people will probably also need menstrual products. Like, you know, there's so many things that you don't think are happening here. And I think the thing that was really important for us also is like being really careful of like Western saviorism or like white saviorism. Obviously, like I'm not a white person, but a lot of the people on our team are, and we are from the West, and there's like a lot of, you know, charities that like go to African countries and are like, oh, the poor Africans that like we need to help you. And then they like build half a well and then take a bunch of pictures, and, you know, you never see them again. And the people in those places that they've, you know, started helping are left with like half a well and nothing. But, you know, the charity got their pictures. So we really wanted to make sure that we didn't do that. And we were like, listen, if we get to Kenya and we realize that everything we've planned is like, that's not what they need at all, then we have to be able to like change it. And we didn't want to bring disposable anything. Like we didn't want to bring pads or tampons because those things run out, whereas Diva Cups last for 10 years. So it's not only like environmentally friendly, it's like you're not going to be dependent on me to come back in the next 6 months or the next year to keep giving you things, because
you're setting these people up with something sustainable,
and we're like,
and powerful, or like, I don't know, like if that's the word, but something that is really going to help, like really going to make a statement and help. And
we really try and like partner with the community, like community leaders, and like having people that we work with who live there and who are there and can make sure that once we're gone, it's not all going to like crumble to the ground. Because we really feel like we're just here to like present you with a tool and maybe some facts that you may not have learned before. But we really want to make sure that we're like, you don't need the West. Like you don't need us to be like, here's the right way to live. Like you are all so incredibly intelligent, so capable. Like most of the kids that we visited speak like at least 3 languages, at least.
Wow.
Because everyone speaks English. Everyone speaks Kiswahili, which is like the broad language. And then typically there's like the language of whatever tribe you're from. And then there can be like a whole bunch of other dialogues that you, depending on like sub-tribes and like all of those things. So like there are some people who are like, yeah, I speak like 7 languages. And I'm like, and you think that the West is the epitome of like all that is like good, and, you know, obviously like colonialism and exploitation of like Africa as a continent is the reason why that happens. But like, I'm like, yeah, we are here to give you maybe some tools that you would not have access to otherwise, but like really you have so much. Like you are all so smart and so capable and so like funny and bright, and yeah, like you continue to build your communities, because like us being there for 5 weeks, like it's not that all of a sudden like we know the way of Kenya or like any of those things. Like you just being like you, like you have as much to teach us as we have to teach you, and like you know your community's best and what you need, and you should be able to go to school and get that education and like follow your dreams, just like I got to, because you know, why shouldn't you have that? Yeah. So hopefully when the world opens back up, we can
keep going. Yeah.
Continue. Right now we're like making the second handbook, the second edition, which is like really exciting.
Oh, wonderful.
But yeah, hopefully we can keep traveling and keep going.
Yeah.
At some point.
Thank you for like mentioning it when I reached out to you about this, because I had no idea, and I am so inspired by this completely, to allow the dialogue of normalizing menstruation and allow people to live freely and to educate themselves freely and not have to be bogged down by blood every month, as so many of us are.
Wow. And you're like, hey, everybody can learn and talk about these things. Like, it's not just people who menstruate. Like, if you don't menstruate, it's still good knowledge to have, and would probably make communities like a lot more like equal in a way, a lot more compassionate, a lot more understanding. Because there's so many people who just like have never gotten to be a part of the conversation and don't know anything about it, and maybe like don't really respect it, or they're just like grossed out by it and don't think that they have a place in the conversation. But
well, and that's a whole other conversation about like female bodies, or like the you know, reproductive system, and where the division is in that. Totally. We could go on.
We could.
But I think we do have to close up a bit. But thank you so much for making time to sit with me. And
oh my gosh, it was so nice.
Glad we like finally caught paths on the same parallel universe. It's blowing my mind. Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about this stuff. I'm so glad that we could do that, and we'll do it again sometime soon, hopefully in person.
Or we can like have you on our podcast too.
I would be thrilled anytime.
That'd be funny.
Yes.
Season 2.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So do you have like you're closing up season 1 like soon?
Yeah.
Is that what you said? Okay. Okay. Well, everyone should check that out.
This Sunday is the end of season 1 before we take a little holiday break. And then we'll be back in January at some point.
Yay. Okay, I'll link all that below. And I'll also link the website to Diva Day so people will check that out. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. This was so nice.
Thank you so much. I had the best time.
Yay. Okay, I'm gonna pause the recording, but we can keep talking. Thank you so much for listening to the Art Versations podcast. If you like what you heard, the best way to help the podcast is to subscribe or follow on your preferred podcast platform and leave a review. As well, follow the podcast on Instagram at artversationspod. You'll find photos of each of my guests so you can match a voice to a face, and highlight clips from each episode. Let's keep the conversation going. Send in a DM with your own thoughts about art, as well as any questions you think I should ask my guests. The podcast community continues to grow, and that is all because of you, listener. All bodies are dancer bodies, and all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter. Till next time.